All right, welcome everyone. You should be in the information session for the Aspiring Latino Leaders Fellowship. If that's where you were hoping to get to right now, then you're in the right place. We are excited to connect with you today and just share a little bit more about the program, our organization, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, and then uh, create some space to answer any questions that you may have. So just as a heads up, we are going to spend probably about the first 15 or 20 minutes or so going through some updates for you all. We'll introduce you to some members of our team and just share information about the program. And as you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. My colleagues will respond to them in real time. And then we will open up the floor at the end of the call to just anyone who wants to come off mute and share questions that you also have that we didn't answer yet. So we'll make sure to stay on for as long as we need to get your questions answered today so that you feel confident about knowing about this program. All right. I'm going to kick us off. My name is R.D. Leyva. I'm the Vice President of Program Strategy and Operations at Latinos for Education. I've been with the organization since we were founded, which has been nearly 10 years. And during that time, I've had a few different roles, but I have always been excited to work closely with our fellows and our fellowship and the folks that run our team and our programs. And so I am joined by a few of them here today who are on this call. So give you all a quick moment to introduce yourselves. And I'll start with Mara, if you want to share a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is so good to be here with you. My name is Mara Gilliard, and I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships for the Greater Houston area. I am a former educator, have been in the educational ecosystem my whole career, and it is so good to be here with you today. I have the honor of being able to oversee the programming that happens here in Houston, so I'm excited to connect with you and learn more about each of you. I'll hand it off to Chris Espinosa.
Buenos dias, everybody. Chris Espinosa here. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships for Latinos for Education in Massachusetts. So I have been with the organization a while. My most important title was Fellow and then Alumni. I was part of the 2017 inaugural cohort of the Aspiring Latino Leaders Fellowship here in Massachusetts, way back in the day. And I always like to say that that was my favorite role with the organization before coming and being able to be a part of the Massachusetts team here. I've been in the education ecosystem for over 10 years now, working mostly in the higher ed and college access space. And so that's a lot of what I did prior to joining the L4E team. And now I have the honor of overseeing our fellowship programs in Massachusetts and our fellow and alumni experiences here in the Commonwealth. And so very excited to be here and, throughout the day, very happy to answer questions, both from kind of my director lens as well as my alumni lens, because I like to, remind folks that I have more experience as an alumni than I do as a staff member here. So happy to share both perspectives. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Cheko.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. My name is Jorge Cheko Jr., and I am the Director of Programs and Partnerships here in the Bay Area. And before joining the L4E team almost a year ago, last June, I was a teacher for more than a decade, teaching second grade, fourth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade, as well as serving my local community as an elected school board member, where I still serve now at the county level. And so I'm really excited to also grow and foster strong program and fellowship experiences for our Bay Area fellows, which constitutes about 9 counties that all share a shore with the San Francisco Bay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on back to RD.
Thank you, Cheko. Thank you, team. You all will get to hear more from them as they are going to chime in and answer some questions and share more about our programming. And I encourage you, if you can identify folks from your regional area, that will be the person you're more likely going to contact with throughout this experience. So they will be sure to be your guide kind of through this application process and any future steps as well. All right. Again, if you are just joining us, we are going to just spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about Latinos for Education overall. And then we'll talk specifically about the program. We'll discuss the recruitment timelines and just any other information you may need to know. And then again, if you have questions throughout this conversation as things come up, please enter them in the chat and we will respond to them. And we will also hold time at the end for Q&A. All right, I want to just start with sharing a few numbers about the Latino community and the leadership that Latinos represent in the education sector. So at Latinos for Education, we know our work is important because Latinos are the second largest ethnic group in the US and one of the fastest growing in the nation. And we know that inequities face Latino students, and these barriers create representation gaps as well too for leaders in this space. And so we see that across the education ecosystem, whether you're a teacher, an administrator, superintendent, board member, et cetera. And so not only is our population growing of Latinos, but that representation needs to also increase. And so that's what we are committed to doing. And through this program, this is one of the ways that we do that. We know that almost 33% of our students in K-12 public classrooms are Latino, and that the representation of Latino in leadership at all levels needs to reflect the changing of our student demographics. And in some places like Texas and California, the Latino students are already accounting for more than 50% of the student population. And so it is important. This is something that we are committed to increasing the representation of leaders across the sector, in particularly this program, which pulls applicants and folks from a wide range of experiences all across the education ecosystem. So our mission at Latinos for Education is to develop, place, and connect those leaders in the education sector while increasing their voices to promote practices and policies to remove those barriers. And so that's why we do the work that we do. And hopefully this is something that you all resonate with and part of the reason why you're interested in learning more about not just our organization, but also this program specifically. All right. Throughout our time, I am going to just briefly put in a few slides here with our different fellows. So as I pass to Mara, who will share a little bit more about our fellowship program, I did want to just highlight some of her fellows here, just show a picture of them in the Houston region. And we've got our other regions going to be represented as well, too.
Thank you so much, Hardy. Yes, so these are our current fellows who are getting ready to finish their program in May. So we're excited to celebrate with them at the end of their fellowship experience. We can go to the next. So let's talk about the Aspiring Latino Leader Fellowship. RD was just mentioning the critical role that we have as an organization and really as leaders in education to be able to support Latino students and all students across the educational ecosystem. The Aspiring Latino Leader Fellowship, it does exactly that. It is a 9-month leadership development program that is designed to equip education professionals within the ecosystem with the skills, network, and strategic insights that they need to advance their careers and drive systemic change in the educational ecosystem. Through the work that we do, we have research-based curriculum and access to influential educational leaders, not just in the local landscape, but also across the nation. So this is one of the incredible things that happens during our fellowships, that you have the opportunity to learn from and connect with leaders within the educational ecosystem locally, but also across the nation. Fellows gain the tools to expand their impact, ensuring that students, families, and communities benefit from strong, effective leadership, so that the work that you do and the learnings that you gain are something that you can take with you and implement in your practice and the work that you are leading already. We have multiple topics that we discuss throughout the fellowship experience, but some of the most popular topics or some of the topics that we want to highlight include developing a public narrative, which plays a major role in all of the work that we do at Latinos for Education in the way that we lead within our values. So we have the public narrative as one of our topics. We also talk about the state of Latino education. So how are Latino students performing locally and then also across the nation? We talk about ways to influence educational policy and practice, and also provide you with the tools and connections to be able to do that throughout the fellowship experience and even beyond. So if this is an area that you're really passionate about or you want to learn more about, that is one of the conversations we have. That is one of our session topics and some of the work that we do. We also talk about artificial intelligence in education, which is a constantly evolving conversation and topic that is very current, and that is one of the areas that we dive into within our Aspiring Latino Leader Fellowship. And also family engagement. So how do we build collaborative engagement with the families that we serve and those in our communities? So who are the candidates for the Aspiring Latino Leader Fellowship? The ideal candidate is somebody who has 8 or more years of professional experience. This is someone who holds a mid-level or senior level role across the educational ecosystem, such as somebody within a school district, a charter network, a nonprofit, higher education, somebody that works in ed tech, or the local educational agency. These are just some examples of the individuals that would make up this candidate profile. Also, somebody who is committed to improving student outcomes in historically underserved communities. So if some of these bullet points that we've highlighted identify you, you are somebody that we would like to have in our program. And then we're also lastly looking for individuals who work in the Massachusetts state, the state of Massachusetts, the greater Houston area, or the Bay Area. The application for the program is, the priority deadline is this Friday, April 25th. And then our final deadline will accept applications all the way until Friday, May 23rd. And I think I saw some questions, so we'll answer some of these questions as they come through the chat. But also we'll have an opportunity, as already mentioned, for some questions at the end. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Cheko.
Thank you, Mara. So as you can see here, this is our current Bay Area Fellows ALF cohort for this year, as well as our LTF fellowship, which we will not be having for this upcoming year. So for this upcoming year, it's only going to be focused on our ALF fellowship. So if we can go to the next slide. I'm going to be talking about the program dates and timelines. So we're covering a lot of interesting session topics, as my colleague Mara said, from developing public narratives to AI. So when exactly does all of this instruction and professional development happen? It all kicks off in our own local regions on a Saturday in September. For Houston, it's going to be Saturday, September 6th, Massachusetts, Saturday, September 13th, and Bay Area, Saturday, September 20th. And that's going to be a full day session from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Is when the in-person sessions take place in each region. And if you see here on the right-hand side of the slide, we are going to have a mix of in-person and virtual sessions. So in-person and virtual sessions will fluctuate, and that will go from, again, if it's an in-person, it's going to be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. If it's going to be virtual, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time, or 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. So depending on where you're going to be in your regions, that's going to change the time of your session. And so just make sure that these session dates make sense with your schedule, because attendance is critical. It's certainly critical for you to accomplish your problem of practice project with your teams. It's critical for you to really take and harness all of the professional development session topic goals that you'll be covering with experts from across the nation, with regional experts from your own localities. And all of that is going to be based on your own participation, both as a participant as well as a team player for your own ALF fellows and colleagues. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it now to my colleague, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to be talking quickly over the program fees and expectations around the fees. So because we have potential applicants as well as potential partners in districts and nonprofits, I just want to kind of talk about this from two different levels. So if you are a district that is sponsoring a employee to take place in this fellowship, there is a district fee of $2,500 for this fellowship. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a moment. I just kind of want to talk through the numbers quickly. Then if you are a nonprofit organization looking to sponsor a employee for the fellowship, the fee is going to be $1,500. And then fellows will pay a $300 fellow fee. So what are all of these fees for? So this goes through subsidizing the cost of the fellowship. So all of the different facilitators, the venues, catering, all of those costs are all wrapped in, and we do most of our work is through philanthropy, and we'll get a lot of the costs of these programs paid through that. So what these fees do is cover the remaining balance for those things. So one thing I always like to make sure to stress early is that there are plenty of barriers already in existence that make it difficult for Latinos to access, different leadership and professional opportunities. And the sooner that we know, the easier it is for us to work with you if there is some kind of challenge that you have with these fees. So I encourage you to make sure to reach out to your regional representative if this looks like something that would pose a challenge to you or your organization. So make sure that if that is something that is, you see these numbers and you have some concerns about, the earlier that we know about them, the easier it is for us to make accommodations and support you throughout the process. And so these fees are always charged at the beginning of you accepting your place in the fellowship. So once you apply, you go through the interview process, which I'll explain shortly. And then after that, if you have been accepted and then choose to accept your place in the fellowship, that is when the fee becomes due. And then we can work with you around the timeline for that. Okay, we can go ahead and move on to the next section. So the next section is the application timeline. Mara already kind of mentioned this slightly earlier on. So our application window is March 31st through May 23rd. As some of you may know, we have our first priority deadline coming up on Friday. And so that is our first priority deadline. So this is the best time to make sure that you get your applications in. We do fill up our fellowships heavily by this priority deadline. So if you are considering applying, I highly recommend that you get your applications in as soon as possible. However, the window will stretch all the way until May 23rd. So that is a good, something for you to keep in mind. So if you don't know that you'll be able to apply by the priority deadline, you need a little bit more time to get things together. One thing I always recommend is that you reach out to your regional individuals. So Mara for Houston, Cheko for the Bay, and then me for Massachusetts, saying, hey, I'm not going to be able to get my application in by this timeline, but I am very interested in submitting. Letting us know these things really helps us and will also help you so that we can make sure that we keep you on our radar. So something I always recommend that you do if that is something that you're considering. So what happens next? After all the applications have been submitted, we will go through an internal review process and then extend invites to folks that are moving on to the next round. So invites will be for a interview. It'll be a one-on-one interview with somebody from our regional staff, and those will take place between mid-May and mid-June. So that is going to be the timeline depending on, when we review your application, whether it's priority deadline or the final deadline. Some of those dates will shift a little bit, but we try to wrap up all of the interviews by that middle of June timeline. And then late June is when we will do all of our selection decisions, and we'll be sending out invitations for the fellows that have been accepted into this year's cohort. One thing I always get asked when I talk about this is, if I don't get accepted, what does that mean? What that means is that, we do a lot of work in trying to make sure that our cohorts are well-rounded. It does not mean that you will never be accepted. We always encourage you to be involved, even if you don't get accepted in your first round of the application process. We always encourage you to come back, to stay in touch, and to apply into the next year. And so that happens a lot. A lot of people, I feel like, have questions and are worried, if I don't get accepted this year, should I, wait and apply a different time? I always say, absolutely stay in touch with us. It's always more important for us to stay in touch. So what is involved in the application itself? So the application is going to have a couple of different components. So the first big piece is the resume. So we always ask everybody to submit a updated resume with their application. This gives us a little bit of a rundown of your experience and your professional experiences based on how we want to create our cohorts. And then the next piece is going to be an essay. So these essays are going to, like the slideshow says, they want you to talk about your experience and how they've shaped your beliefs about education and what role your Latinx identity has played in your leadership journey. So that's kind of the first question. The second question is, describe a time you advocated for or influenced a policy change in your professional role. What was the outcome? And this can be at any role or any level, right? So some folks are going to be talking about this from kind of a classroom perspective. Some folks will be talking about an organizational perspective. Some folks may be even talking about this from a state or federal policy perspective. And so all of those things are okay and valid. We are really looking for your experience and your impact in that process, more so than what level of policy or change were you influencing. And then you'll have another question: what type of leadership opportunities or professional development would support your growth and impact? And so this is going to really be us looking at your responses on what you're trying to get out of the experience. And so that is the breakdown of all of our application components. And so I think that is actually the end of our piece. So you can see here, this is our Massachusetts fellows for our LTF and ALF cohorts from this year. And I hope to be seeing more of your faces there for next year.
Great. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and we are going to open it up for more Q&A. Thank you for those of you who have been asking questions in the chat. And if there's more questions that you want to ask there, feel free. We'll answer in real time. But at this point, feel free to take yourself off mute if you have a question, especially if there's one that you think would be valuable for the whole group.
Could you repeat what the priority deadline is, please?
Yes, the priority deadline is this Friday.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I saw Mara just put her email in the chat. Chris, I'm gonna ask you and Cheko to also put yours in there in case folks also want to grab those while we're chatting. I see a hand raised. Jenny? Yes?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, nice to meet everyone. I was in touch with Chris previously. Sorry, I called you Chris, but Christopher. I am in the New England area. So I'm in Connecticut. I am willing to travel. But everything's based out of Mass. Is that accurate? Okay. And then my other question was, if we submit the application, when more or less would you have to have the funding? And like if we have a union, or you know what I mean? Perhaps this is a little bit too much sharing, but depending if you're with a different institution, like, can you guys help us work out those kinks?
Yeah, great questions on both of those things. So I know I mentioned this in our email. I'll just share to the broader group in case others are in that situation. So, and this is there's some similarities here, so I won't speak for other regions. I'll let Mara and Cheko chime in if they have other things to add. But for those of you that may be coming from various areas in New England, just because you are not in Massachusetts specifically does not necessarily mean that you will be excluded from a possibility of selection into the cohort. Like I was telling Jenny, right? Like there is an importance towards attendance. And we cannot always guarantee that for our in-person sessions, there will be a virtual component that we can accommodate. A lot of it is going to be dependent on, what the content of the content of the session is, facilitators, all those kinds of things come into play for some of those things. And so, if you are willing to travel, if you are willing to, you make that commitment to us that you're not going to let the distance, enable or prevent you from attendance, I'm more than happy to accept folks. We have had folks from all over New England in our fellowships in the past, and we look to continue that. So while we are based in Massachusetts and all of our sessions will be in the greater Boston or Boston area, I do encourage folks that are outside of that area to consider applying anyway, as long as you're able to make the commitment of attending those in-person sessions. And then for the second part of your question, yes, we definitely understand that there are, depending on the organization or the school district or things like that, there is some challenges that come with getting those bills paid. So like I said earlier, the earlier you let us know those things, the easier it will be for us to help you work with that. So we have a team that is, more than welcome to talk to your institutions and all those kinds of things. We can fill out the contracts depending on what your school requirements are. I know a lot of school districts will require a W-9 for those types of things, or they'll have specific pay streams that professional development stuff comes through. So we are familiar with those things, and we are happy to work with your organization. We do try to, make a deadline of your payments being due by the opening session in September. However, if there is a reason that cannot happen, or there are other things that need to happen, like I said, the earlier you let us know, the easier it'll be for us to kind of troubleshoot those things and work out, an accommodation to take care of that individual situation. Anything I missed on that part?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hi there. Thank you guys so much for hosting this. Appreciate your time and all the insight. Quick question I had was around current fellows, and if there's an opportunity for us to maybe connect over 15 minutes or a phone call to just hear more about their experience and see if the fellowship where we are in our careers would be a good fit.
Yeah, I can jump in for that one. Absolutely. So one of the things that if you are interested in connecting with an alumni or a staff member or, a current fellow, get in touch with your regional individuals. So again, for those who have jumped on at various points, Mara for Texas, Cheko for the Bay, and me for Massachusetts, the earlier you get in touch with us, the easier it'll be for us to facilitate that kind of thing, especially since our fellows, they're also educators right now, and this is a difficult time of the year for them, and they are kind of already stretched finishing their final projects for the fellowship. So if you give us a longer runway, we are more than likely able to accommodate that, but we'd be happy to try and facilitate that kind of a connection for you.
Great, I see two hands. Let's go Diana and then Ashley.
Hi, I was just curious. Thank you for providing the dates. How much work or I'm just trying to understand between sessions, like how much kind of personal time would I need to be, kind of making sure that I'm committing to between the, the monthly sessions?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Thank you so much for your question. So the question is, how much time should I be expecting to commit to the pre-work and just preparing for the monthly sessions? The pre-work, we understand that there are so many things happening in everybody's professional and personal life as well. So we're very mindful of that work that we are assigning and making sure that we are using to prepare for the fellowship experience. Most of the pre-work that we assign takes anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours at the most, I would say. 2 hours sounds like a lot of time as well, but 1.5 hours to 2 hours prior to the session. And we usually share the pre-work at least 2 weeks in advance. That allows the individuals the opportunity to work on that and prepare for their upcoming session. Aside from the in-person and or virtual sessions, that is the only other time commitment that the fellowship requires. We have optional opportunities to connect with fellows during the fellowship experience, to establish those one-on-one connections, and then also to meet as a group within regions. But those are all optional opportunities.
Mara, can you also share a little bit about the problem of practice as well?
Yes.
And the time commitment for that.
Yes. So as part of the fellowship experience, every single fellow works within a group to complete a problem of practice. This problem of practice is based on a couple of different areas of interest, including family engagement, artificial intelligence and education, policy and advocacy, and teaching and learning. And so based on the topic, the problem that the group identifies, they have throughout the fellowship opportunities to meet with their groups to be able to accomplish and come up with their final presentation and product for the culmination event. So these presentations go on throughout the fellowship experience, and then they are presented at the culmination of their fellowship experience with their groups, but also a wider audience. But that, again, that is also something that we're pretty intentional about, incorporating time during our fellowships to give fellows the opportunity to connect with their group members. But also these types of meetings and work meetings happen outside of work, outside of the fellowship experience as well, based on the teams.
Just going to jump in real quickly because I saw a couple of questions about this in the chat. Thank you, Mara. About if this was just for teachers or like who the fellowship was for folks who jumped in a little bit later. So just want to address that. I know Cheko already put in a response as well. But this is really targeted for folks in their mid to senior level positions within their organization, and not specifically towards just folks in schools or teachers. So this could be folks in ed policy, this could be ed tech, this could be folks in the nonprofit realm, as well as K-12 schools and higher ed. And so we are really looking for folks that are looking to amplify their voice and, go through that route. So, this means that we are looking for very diverse and balanced cohorts. So sometimes we do have teachers that are looking to move up into administration. Sometimes we have, assistant superintendents. So it really runs the gambit through all levels of the organization. And it really comes down to kind of what your experience has been and what kind of application and interview process that you have.
Thank you, Chris. Ashley, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yes, Artie, thank you. I also had a question about the deliverables and the project requirements. And so I think Mara did a really good job of just kind of hitting on my curiosity there. But thank you.
Okay, great. And then Jessica?
Yeah, I just had a quick question for how do you define mid-level folks? And then, yeah, just curious about that.
I'm happy to start if other folks want to build off of it too. So I think so one of the things to help with that is the work experience note. So we started and shared that about 8 or more years of work experience is probably about the right level. In terms of different roles, I think it depends. A lot of our folks, working in kind of more either administrative roles or nonprofits or other roles might have like a director title or above in some ways as kind of a gauge. I know that varies by organization, so we're not hard and fast by those kinds of things. So I want to name that too. If you are, for example, in teaching and definitely, or in a place that doesn't have like those kinds of names of levels, then we look more again at the amount of work experience and kind of seeing the leadership you've exhibited on your resume. And so having an updated resume with your experiences as well as other things that you're doing outside that, any councils you're on, any boards that you're on, any volunteer experience that is relevant would also, I think, give us a fuller picture to your leadership experience.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you.
I agree. And I'll add to that. I would say any other, as already mentioned, any other groups, organizations, type of work that you do outside of your role is also really important. Those are some of the things that we notice with a lot of the fellows that we work with. And then also the program is Aspiring Latino Leaders, right? We've had many of our fellows go through our fellowship experience and then receive a promotion through their roles. And so, as RD mentioned, it's not necessarily within the title that we're looking for. We're really looking at the experiences and things that you bring into the cohort.
I want to continue if there are more questions that folks have. These are some really great ones. So thank you for asking. And if you haven't spoken up yet, this is the moment to do so, please.
Do want to just highlight a question that was in the chat, and it was about are there specific parameters for the essays? So when I think about the essay, one of the things that I encourage applicants to think about is that this is their first time to introduce like who you are and what drives you to us. And that is really what we're looking for. We want to know, you know, like the titles are nice and you know, like the jobs and the roles that you have, like those are all nice things that we can see from your resume. What we're really looking for is, you know, what are those things that really drive you? What are those things that are not on the resume that give us an insight to your passions in the education sector, into your, you know, how your Latinidad really like propels you and how you embrace that in your leadership, or how you want to. Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to do that and you want to find more ways to do it, right? Like those are the things that we want to hear from your essay. So I wouldn't say that there's like specific parameters. You know, I'm not like sitting there counting how many words exactly that you typed, or, you know, did you use a specific format for your essay? The things that I care about are what drives you. You know, what impact do you want to make on your students, on your community, on you know, the education sector as a whole, right? Like those things are what really matter. So the more that you can tell us about that, I would say that the better off you are in terms of like producing a solid essay response. You know, we know your resume. That's why we have you submit it. But what I want to know is more of the what drove that resume. What are the things in your story that you know, propelled you in that direction, or you made you make the choices that you made professionally, or, you know, where you want to go. You know, that's what we want to hear is those pieces. I don't know if others want to chime in on that.
I think that's great. Thank you, Chris. I will say the guidance does, it will tell you that there is a word count, a 300 word count for the essays. But to Chris's point, it is more about the content of that. So we will not be such sticklers for it. So if you go slightly over that, that's fine. We ask you all to submit essays by uploading it in a Word document or a PDF. And so just one tip is if you wanted to write those out beforehand, before you submit the application, then I encourage you to do that. We shared the essay questions with you so that you can have some time and space to do that this week if you wanted to get it in before the first deadline. And then when you go through the application process, it'll make that process a little more smooth if you have those essays ready to go. Other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Mercedes, I think you came off mute, but I can't hear you.
Oh,
I think it's just the volume.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just talking louder now. Thank you so much for hosting this. My name's Mercedes. I'm at a independent school, and just looking through, I see that you have someone from Beaver Country Day last year in the Massachusetts. section. So I was just wondering what the experience is like for folks in independent schools, since there haven't been many that I'm seeing in the cohorts.
No, great question. Yeah, we have definitely had folks from independent schools before. So I would say that part of this fellowship in particular is really designed to be a coming together point for people all around the sector. So there is some content that does touch on, very specific, K-12 systems, because that's the majority of what you'll see in our region. But I wouldn't say that somebody outside of a K-12 school district, so charter schools or independent schools or anything like that, I wouldn't say that you would not be getting content that is, beneficial to you. We keep the content more general when we can. There are some things that, like I was saying, when we are talking about certain systems, we'll probably default more often towards K-12 systems just because they're the predominant, but we're not excluding others. We will talk about how charters are impacted. So for example, one of our sessions, we talk a lot about family engagement. And so we talk more about the theory of family engagement and how that looks. So some of our examples may focus on, ways that K-12 systems are implementing those things, but not only K-12. We'll also talk about, what does that mean for higher education as well? Because while it may look different than a K-12 system, there are still concepts that fit and match, right? So ed policy, we'll talk about ed policy from a state and federal level, not just at a, K-12 school, public school district level, where we may pull examples from K-12 district levels on how they are implementing things from the federal level, but it wouldn't be exclusionary to, somebody's experience at a different type of school. That's why this fellowship is really focused on the whole ed sector. So, folks that are in, ed tech may not have actually ever been in a school at all. And the concept still fits. So a lot of the concepts that we talk about are more leadership development with examples or with a lens or a focus on how it impacts the education systems. But it's not gonna, I wouldn't say that it would feel like there are sessions that don't mean anything to you. And we design them there that way very particularly. Anything I missed on that part, RD or Mata or Cheko, anything you'd like to add? I hope that helps, Mercedes. Feel free to probe further if there are other things that you're very curious about.
Yeah, thank you. I do have another question. It would be personal to my application though, if that's okay to ask.
Yeah.
My role is changing next year, and I think my title well, my title's funky. It's like a weird school title where I just do a bunch of things. So I'm hoping that I'm happy that the essay gives me an opportunity to speak towards that, but I guess I'm just wondering how I can make that come across more strongly in the application that my title is changing. And so I will be involved in higher admin work. But that will come across next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that has happened before. I worked at a nonprofit previously before coming to Latinos for Education, and my title was navigator. And it was like, what does that even mean? Like, if you're not in that organization, nobody knows, right? And I always had to be like, well, it's an equivalent to this, right? Like my boss was a master navigator, and unless you're a teacher and know what a master teacher is, you may not have any understanding of what that was supposed to mean. She was more of an executive director. So that kind of stuff happens all the time. Don't worry about it. There's a couple ways that you can kind of communicate that to us if you feel like it's important to elaborate on. One would be through one of your essays or through your short answer. You can always kind of put a line in there about that if it's relevant to the question. Trying to think of like a specific way to answer that. Like, for example, if you're talking about, what you're trying to get out of it, that's the last short answer question. You might say like, this is what my role is now. It's going to be this. And I think like it's going to be really important for me to have these experiences to benefit in that new role. So that might be one way you tie it in. The other way that you can do that is just shoot me an email. So that totally has happened multiple times. We've had fellows that, submitted an application and then got a promotion they weren't expecting and, reached out and said, hey, this happened, like, can you update my application for me? Always happy to do those things. That's pretty common. So no worries at all. That won't be a major issue for you. Of
Thank you.
course.
Thank you so much for those questions. Anyone else have questions that they haven't asked yet?
Really quickly, what time is the deadline on Friday? Is there a specific time frame?
It should be midnight, your local time. So if you can get in by then, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's so wonderful to meet you.
Great. All right. If there are no further questions, we will just close out. And again, I will just share, it's been so nice getting to hear you all's questions, and thank you for your interest in the program. Our team will be following up with you. If there's anything that you have questions about, feel free to reach out to us as well too. And we look forward to seeing your applications come through either at the deadline this Friday or in a few weeks during our final deadline. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.